The Witcher 1 always seems like kind of the older, smaller and weaker brother of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And it's always been in the shadow of the third adaptation of CD Projekt's Witcher. And rightfully so. I mean, for a lot of people, myself included, The Witcher 3 is the best game ever created. But in some ways, The Witcher 1 really stands out, and I think makes an even better job at certain points than its bigger brother does. Because if you think about The Witcher 1, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is it the clunky combat? Or the outdated mechanics? You know, all of these things are fine and I agree with them. However, when I think of The Witcher 1, the first thing that comes to my mind is the game's atmosphere. And now, what makes the atmosphere of The Witcher 1 so special? I mean, you have to say, these games all play in the same world. You know, they all have quite similar characters, and they all have very similar settings, you know, with this medieval Eastern Europe type open world. And you know, obviously, the games are based on the books by Andrzej Sapkowski, and what I really liked about the books is that they don't present a typical fantasy world, you know, where evil and good are very easily separated, like other franchises do. You know, the streets are very dirty, people are greedy and dishonest, and Geralt is definitely not the perfect hero, caring about everyone and everything, you know. He often struggles with his choices, which is perfectly displayed in the Witcher games, just trying to pick the lesser evil. And in my opinion, The Witcher 1 from 2007 is the carbon copy of that exact world. You know, the dialogues really represent the books just perfectly. And Geralt as a character is also very on point. You know, he's very cynic, but speaks only what's necessary and is very skeptical. And you know, the world of The Witcher 1 is filled with medieval-inspired architecture, with, you know, muddy paths, with weathered towns, and the visual design really creates a lived-in, authentic world that feels tangible. And myself, being half Polish, after visiting some castles or some towns, a lot of architecture looked quite similar to one another. Like just roaming through the outskirts of Vizima. I think the outskirts of Vizima literally are one of my favorite locations, and I don't know why. You know, this gritty and realistic place with this very dark tone where, you know, monsters and even people are a constant threat is a location that I didn't forget for a long time after playing The Witcher 1. And I have to say that the game's soundtrack, and I think the soundtracks in video games are very often extremely neglected, but I will also make a separate video on that topic. And in The Witcher 1, the soundtrack really enhances the atmosphere, you know, with its moody and very dark tones, inspired by a lot of Eastern European history. And you know, when people think of The Witcher 1, they always seem to only remember the bad stuff, you know. They remember the clunky combat, you know. They remember the mechanics that, I mean, are 15 years old. But what they don't remember is the crazy atmosphere that the game has. And I have to say that The Witcher 3, although heavily relying on the books, loses the same feel to it. And as I said, The Witcher 3 is my favorite game of all time, but still, The Witcher 1 really nails the atmosphere, and I want you guys to think about it. I mean, there are very few games, even from recent years, that come close to the atmosphere of The Witcher 1. And you know, the variety of locations definitely adds to that point. Look, you go through the outskirts of Vizima, into Vizima the city itself, where first you discover the poor and brutal part of the city, visiting the rich and beautiful part. Or also the fields from chapter 4. I'm telling you guys, they really feel like Poland, and very close to what the people back then used to live. And I think the atmosphere of The Witcher 1 really is the part to why I've replayed the game 3 times now. And I think in that sector, it makes the best job out of the 3 games. And obviously with the remake now coming out, I really hope that they can kind of capture that same atmosphere that they had in the game published 15 years ago. Because that, enhanced with great mechanics, stunning visuals, would just be a banger, I'm telling you guys. I'm aware that this is a very unpopular opinion, because obviously many people everywhere refer to the first game as being very clunky and boring. But I personally have to say that my experience with The Witcher 1 was definitely a very different one. So I think that if you play The Witcher 1, and with a good headset I would add here, because the sound and the soundtrack are very good, and if you let yourself really immerse into the game, I guarantee you will have a different experience. And so that was my take where The Witcher 1's atmosphere is arguably better than The Witcher 3's, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about the topic. And with that said, that was it from me guys in today's video. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.